You're listening to the Bears Barroom Radio Network, and the following program is suitable for all audiences.
Paxton for three! Yeah! Yeah!
In 1993, when Chicago Bulls guard John Paxson sunk the series-winning shot in Game 6 of the NBA Finals, Mark Schanowski was there reporting. In 1988, when Michael Jordan beat Dominique Wilkins in what is considered the greatest, most controversial slam dunk duel of all time, David Schuster was there reporting.
What kind of expectations do you set for yourself individually going into year 3?
In 2010, when Derrick Rose said,
"Why can't I be the MVP of the league? Why can't I be the best player in the league? I don't see why. Why can't I do that?"
It was Mark Schanowski who asked the question.
It is my distinct honor to present the 2010-2011 NBA Most Valuable Player Award to Derrick Rose of the Chicago Bulls.
In 2011, when Rose accepted the Most Valuable Player Award to become the youngest MVP in the history of the league, David Schuster was there reporting. Schanowski, Schuster, two of Chicago's most accomplished NBA reporters. This is Sharpshooters.
And welcome into another edition of Sharpshooters. I'm David Schuster. He, of course, is Mark Schanowski. In just a little bit, we're going to be talking to our good friend Kendall Gill. I'm sure he'll have some good stuff for both of us.
He has a million stories. He can spray to all fields.
I love talking boxing with him. I love talking anything with him, but specifically about basketball. Speaking of basketball, Mark, obviously the big story locally here is the fact that the Bulls it took him a long time, but to his credit, Arturas Karnisovas did do what all the Bulls fans wanted him to do, and that was to get rid of Jim Boylan. And I hate to use that terminology, but they did fire him, and they're going to move on to the next coach. Your thoughts?
Well, we've talked about it on past episodes, the fact that any new front office should have the right to bring in their own coaching staff. It was very puzzling as to why it took so long. Arturas mentioned in his news conference that he was very deliberate in his process and that he looked at it as this was the end of the regular season when the seeding games were completed at the bubble, and that was the logical time to make a coaching change. Obviously, he had over 4 months to pore over tape of every game. He had a chance to talk to Jim Boylan in person, go over film, and get his philosophies and what he thought of the talent on the roster. He took his time to get whatever knowledge he could get from Jim and the current staff. Now he can use that in evaluating the players and deciding what changes he needs to make. But I thought that I'm sure that Arturas, when he met with Michael Reinsdorf, said, I want to have the freedom to bring in my own head coach. He took more time than I think most fans would have expected, but in the end, he made the change that probably was the logical thing to do.
All right, speaking of Arturas Karnisovas, he happens to be standing over my left shoulder here. No, he's really not. But we did tap into his Zoom press conference the other day. So why don't we hear from him directly? Here was his announcement of the changing of the guard as the Bulls head coach.
I sincerely want to thank Jim Boylan for his time for the Chicago Bulls. I have no doubt that he has given this organization his very best effort and poured his heart into coaching this team. The human element of these decisions is never easy. Jim Boylan cares deeply and passionate about the game and about the Bulls. So the decision to move in a different direction with our head coach is not one was arrived at lightly. Ultimately, my responsibility is to move this organization on a trajectory of success. And it's been apparent from the beginning that this involves making changes. I respectfully acknowledge the hard work and dedication of all of those with this organization that have come before me, but I'm dedicated and committed to cultivating a culture that breeds winning and has its sights set on championships.
And one more, Mark, and then we'll both comment on what he has said right here. He had this message for the fan base.
Well, the signal is that we changing things, signals that, we're looking forward to what's come next. And we just felt that, this program needed to change and needed to change now. And I can't wait to find the next coach for this group.
All right, Mark, so who is going to be that next head coach?
Well, I've been pretty consistent in advocating for Kenny Atkinson, the former Brooklyn Nets coach who took that team from a 20-win squad with no draft picks and turned them into a playoff team in 3 seasons. He got caught in the whole Kyrie Irving avalanche in Brooklyn where Kyrie's saying we've got to bring more talent in, even though they broke the bank to bring in him and his buddy Kevin Durant. I think that's going to be interesting to see what happens in Brooklyn down the road, but we don't care about that now. I think the important thing is to get the right coach in place for one of the youngest teams in the NBA, and I thought Kenny Atkinson did a remarkable job in developing that young talent. You saw what Karis LeVert did, and they almost took Portland out of the playoffs because Karis LeVert was doing a great job. I think that Atkinson would be a good guy to come in here and help develop the talent on hand. And he also has the experience of going through it once in Brooklyn in a big market. I think he'd be a great choice.
You know, Karnisovas, we haven't had a chance to meet him in person because of the whole pandemic thing, and it's all been Zoomed to this point, but you just get the feeling, boy, you're not going to get a real answer out of this guy, that you're going to have to put bamboo shoots under his fingernails to really get the truth out of him. I'm just wondering behind the scenes, Mark, you know, because you and I both heard, and some of the most prominent beat reporters in the city kept saying that they're not going to make a change, that Boylan was going to stick around. It was an economic decision because, you know, he's owed for 2 more years or whatever it was, you know, with the assistant coaches $4 or $5 million total. And I thought that was absolutely ridiculous for a $3.2 billion worth franchise. And I just got a feeling that maybe it just got to the point, even though he said he waited until the last day of the quote-unquote NBA season, I got a feeling he probably started stamping his feet behind the scenes and said, you know what, either I'm going to be in charge or I'm not. Let me do what I need to do, and that is to make a change in the coaches.
Well, we both heard the rumblings over the last few years that the empty seats at the United Center were starting to resonate with the Reinsdorfs, that was the one thing that they noticed. They tuned out all the media coverage about maybe some bad decisions made in terms of coaching and roster composition. But what really got to them was seeing the empty seats in the United Center. Well, when all these stories that you mentioned started to come out about the possibility of Jim Boylan being retained for financial reasons, there was this outcry from the fan base that, well, why did you bring in this new executive and said he's going to have full autonomy in basketball operations and then handcuff him and force him to keep the same coach on hand who had a .317 winning percentage? So I think that the fan reaction to the possibility of Boylan being retained probably sped this along and got to the point where the Reinsdorf said, go ahead, bring in your own guy.
All right, I want to say this about Jim Boylan because I was pretty close with him for the last couple of years, and a really nice man. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Absolutely.
And we'll see what his future has in store for him. But I will say this also. It was awkward at times around him. He just, the feel of him being the head coach of a NBA team, it just didn't feel right. And you know, the goofy timeouts, which no one can explain to me. I'm sorry, no one can. They were just goofy. And there, I'm going to give you one specific incident. It was before the beginning of last season, and we were all invited, about 8 or 9 of us who were pretty close to the team. We were invited down there for a meet and greet with Jim Boylan. And I thought, wow, this is great. You know, we're going to have lunch, which was nice. It was in the back room of
Never turned down a free lunch.
Never. I mean, any reporter worth his weight. Free, I'm in. So we were. Anyway, we were in the. We ate lunch in the back area of the Bulls locker room, which we're never allowed in to begin with. And the food was nice. And so then all of a sudden, I thought, okay, well, we're going to meet and greet. We're going to talk about Jim Boylan. It's not going to be basketball. It's going to be talk about your families, yeah, stuff like that. It was just the opposite of that. We were all sat down like a classroom in the locker room, and he put on some tapes of games from the previous season, and he quizzed us like, what should we do in these situations? It was the most awkward, weird 3 hours of my professional sports life. And I just thought, oh my God, this is just wrong. This is wrong. And then, for instance, if any of us got a question wrong, we were admonished.
You have to run wind sprints.
Yes. I would have been happy to run wind sprints because I would have been out of that room and I would not have come back in. 3 hours of the most ridiculous time of my life, but whatever. He was a nice man. I wish him well, but it was an obvious change they had to make.
Yeah, our friend Casey Johnson has something on NBCSportsChicago.com. You got a chance to talk to Jim, and Jim talked, about his time as head coach and said he really appreciated the opportunity and thanked everybody who gave him that chance. And, I tweeted that you could never really question his passion for the job and his work ethic, his commitment to trying to be the best coach he could be. It just didn't work out. He was a career assistant, really wanted this opportunity, and unfortunately, it didn't work out for a variety of reasons. And, at one point, there's so many great quotes from Jim Boylan, but he referenced something from the Field of Dreams where he says, if you build it, they will come. And I think he's probably more to me, reminds me more of Gene Hackman in Hoosiers, where he's got his playbook in his hand, knocking it against his fist, and he puts 4 players out there. My team is on the floor. He seemed like he was frozen in time, like an era in the 50s, and he couldn't really reach today's player, and ultimately that was probably one of the biggest reasons for his undoing.
Well, Thibs' main thing was he always said, do your job, and Boylan always said, bulls across your chest. Well, I have a feeling he's not having
He's got a lot of gear he'll take with him. That's his bulls across the chest.
He's got money across his chest still
That's
coming
right.
for the next couple
and he'll
of
probably
years.
be back on an NBA bench somewhere down the road as an assistant coach.
And maybe that's where he honestly belongs. Anyway, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to the one and only, and I do mean that, Kendall Gill. We'll be back right after this.
There was one guy who was a linebacker with the Bears. This would have been around circa 1993-94, in that range. He was from Texas A&M, and everybody got along with everybody except this guy. He would stand in front of it. He would grab a baseball bat and stand in front of his locker. He says, anybody gets near with me, and he just kept swinging it around, and he didn't want anybody getting close to him.
Who are we talking about?
Just trying to remember the guy's name.
Oh my God, you're giving us names something you can't remember. Les, that's a cardinal sin in broadcasting.
No, but the guy just was...
Aldo, help Les out. Google that one.
Nobody got along with the guy.
This is the best thing we've ever done on the podcast. You just came up with somebody whose name you don't know.
He was on some Texas A&M teams, and there were some real bad players on that team and some good players as well.
Was it the 12th player from Texas A&M?
No, this guy was a starter for them.
I can't believe this. Listen to the Grobstein Schuster Zone every week right here on the Bears Barroom Network. And Mark, right now we're joined by a very, very special person, a good friend of ours, and one of the best in the business at talking about basketball. You know who I'm talking about. I'll let you do the formal interview.
Kendall Gill is one of the most disciplined athletes that I've ever met. When he was during his playing days, he was on a strict diet, strict workout regimen, and now the man is, I think I can say this, he's reached his 50th birthday, and now he's got a new career as he's training weekend warriors in the 60-40 club. KG, this is taking on a life of its own. Let's start with that. I mean, this is amazing. You've got, during this pandemic, you have people on the football field doing this really demanding workout. Talk about the growth of that.
Yeah, well, thanks, Mark. Actually, it started off with 2 guys, myself and Ian Mahoney, who's a friend of mine. And, during the pandemic, I looked at myself in the mirror, and I weighed 238 pounds, and I was just out of shape. My body didn't look the same. And I said, I called Ian up, and we went out to the football field, and we started running. And then after that, a week later, Arnie Duncan joined us, and then Malik Murray joined us as well. And then so it was us 4, and people, we posted it on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and then it started to grow from there. And we've been doing this thing for 6 months now, and now we have 80 people a day that come out and do the workout. And I don't charge anybody or anything. They just come out. I'm just doing it to boost people's immune systems during this pandemic. And of course, we had to it got so big that we had to put policies and procedures in to keep everybody socially distant. So we have hand sanitizer out there. We stay 6 feet away from everyone. Everybody has to wear a mask when they're done doing the exercises, because nobody really wants to go home.
Yeah, what are they going to do when they go home, right?
Yeah, after the exercises, everybody just stays around, and then it's turned into a community of people that love to come and train and then socialize, 6 feet away, of course, with each other, during the pandemic. So It's great, and then, once you finish the cycle, which is what we call it, which is 50 days of training, you become a made man or a made woman in the club, and, everybody is trying to get to one goal. They get their T-shirt. We even had Sarah Kustok doing it out in New York. And Sarah, she texted me earlier. She's on 28 today, so she's got about 9 days left before she's a made member as well.
Well, I know that your wife Wendy has completed the cycle, and that can be kind of tricky training with your wife. I know there's a lot of great stories. Some of the players that you played with in college and played against in the NBA, referees from the NBA coming out to train with you. But tell us a story about somebody who just couldn't cut it. You don't have to name any names, but I'm sure there were guys that thought they could do it and just couldn't get through it.
Well, there's a lot of people that have come out there that thought that they could do it, and then didn't show up anymore. I mean, they come out for about
the one and done club, right?
Yeah, 4 or 5 days they'll come out, and then you don't see them anymore. But I tell the people in the club that this program is designed to make you quit, because we don't want the people that are going to be in the foxhole with us that are quitters. So I actually put a little, mental pressure on them as well. And it's a physically taxing program, but it's more mental than physical.
He's like Bob Knight. He's running alongside yelling at him the whole time.
Yeah, well, but I yell at him. And guess what? We just had our 6-month anniversary for the 60-40 club Saturday, and we had a big party. It was great. We had a DJ out there. We had food catered in and all that stuff. And they bought me a bullhorn. For what reason, I don't know why. But that's the last thing I needed is a bullhorn.
Yeah.
So I'm out there today, and I'm out there chasing the people down, yelling at them and everything with it. But they love it, though. They love for me to push them. And, even after I'm tough on them, I still give them words of encouragement. So, which is great.
We're talking with Kendall Gill. You can follow him on Twitter at KendallG13. And Kendall's one of the most well-rounded people that I know. I mean, I could, first of all, Kendall and and whenever I see Kendall, obviously basketball is right at the forefront, but he and I talk boxing all the time because it's a passion and love for both of us. And of course, you're undefeated still in the ring, aren't you, Kendall?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, and I'm going to remain undefeated because I'm not getting in there ever.
The O will not go in this instance. Anyway, a lot of people send us questions. One of the questions that was sent to us, and I'll get to a few others later on, but one of them sent to us says, Kendall's in such great shape, and he still plays hoops all the time. You can see him on videos. Someone asked, do you think you could still play the game at the NBA level if you really put your mind to it?
Yeah, no problem. Without even question, I could do it. I look at, and it's not no disrespect to guys in the league, but, some of the guys in the league are like overweight, and, I look at their bodies, I can tell that they're not properly training. Yeah, they're skilled and they're talented, but, physically, I just, I could do it. And, Mark knows this. I had a stint in the Big Three, which, I trained really hard for, but didn't realize that the Big Three was a league where you choose your friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you talk about made men there. Wow.
Yeah. Choose your friends. Yeah, and it was disappointing. So it was disappointing to me because they don't give you what you earn there. I took it seriously when I went there to train. But
hey, Ken, I told David that story about Scalabrine when he said he was going to pick you, and he didn't. I said you're not a big fan of Scalabrine anymore.
Yeah, no. Hey, actually, David, you know what? Can you set up an exhibition with me and Scalabrine?
Oh, I'd love to do that.
I'll come out of retirement for that one.
The O will not go in that instance, that's for sure.
Right? No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I talked to Scal afterwards, and he apologized to me for it. So, it's okay. But getting back to your question, yeah, I totally believe that I could do it. Could I play 48 minutes? No, but I could give you at least a half, 24 minutes a game.
Hey, Kendall, obviously the big story with the Bulls this last few days is the removal of Jim Boylan as head coach. I mean, Jim Boylan's a nice guy, but honestly, I don't know if you'll subscribe to this. I think you probably will. I think he was in over his head as far as the head coach of an NBA team. And what are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Well, I mean, the writing was on the wall. Anytime, and all three of us have been around NBA circles long enough to know that all new management wants their own guy. And I think he was just, lamed up, to begin with, especially after they made the moves. When Gar and Pax when Pax decided to step down and Gar was released, I knew that Jim Boylan's time was up. I mean, I've been a player for 15 seasons, so I've seen this time and again. Unfortunately for Jim, it just didn't work out.
Now, I guess the question is, which direction do you go? One thing we've learned about Arturas is he's very patient, very methodical, and I heard him doing an interview on the radio today saying that, he's going to take at least 2 to 3 weeks to kind of flush out the candidates, some of the top names that are out there right now. What do you think? The Bulls traditionally, Kendall, have leaned towards bringing in coaches without previous head coaching experience. I don't know if that's a financial factor or if that's just they like to groom their guys, within their own system. But what would you like to see? This is one of the youngest rosters in the NBA. There's some talent there, but they definitely need some guidance. They definitely need someone who's strong in player development. What are your thoughts about maybe trying to get a coach with some NBA head coaching experience already?
I totally agree with you, Mark. I think that enough of this, 1 year guys with no experience and everything. I would like to see the Bulls bring in a guy that has experience. And I know there's been a lot of talk about the guy. I believe his name is Udoka in Philly. But you look at Ty Lue, that probably will be available. He has championship experience. He's won a championship. He's been to the finals as a player. He has a lot of experience. And I think that you need a guy that can come in and command the respect of the players right away. And I think that Ty Lue fits that bill perfectly.
It's interesting because Mark and I, Kendall, we talked about this in our last podcast. They could have had a chance at Monty Williams, who obviously is doing a really good job out in Phoenix right now. They were undefeated. Unfortunately, they couldn't make the postseason, but they were undefeated in the bubble. So they wasted in my estimation, they wasted the last couple of years with Jim Boylan. They could have already moved on to have their head coach.
I totally agree with you. I thought that Monty was the perfect candidate, but unfortunately, the Bulls decided to stay in-house. I think a lot of that had to do with the contractual obligations that they had, with Fred Hoiberg. But when a guy like Monty Williams comes available, I think that you got to jump and take that chance at getting him.
What about Kenny Atkinson? Here's a guy who took Brooklyn from a 20-win team with no draft picks because of that trade with Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and he got them into a 7 seed in the playoffs last year. Then this year didn't do quite as well, but that's because Kevin Durant wasn't playing and Kyrie Irving was in and out of the lineup. Wow, what Kyrie Irving does everywhere he goes, Kendall, he's like a destructo man. Everywhere he goes, he blows up the franchise. And Kenny Atkinson kind of got caught in the crossfire. What do you think about him as a possibility to develop this young Bulls team?
Well, I think that you just said it right there. As far as development is concerned, Kenny Atkinson is at the top of the list. He really can develop players. I mean, you look at Karis LeVert, how he developed throughout, while he's still in Brooklyn, but I think that he is leaps and bounds better than he was when he first came into the league. That team really, really played hard for Kenny Atkinson when he was there. The only thing is defensively, he has some holes in his game. And that's where I think Kenny Atkinson needs to improve as a coach. But I think that he's capable of coming in here and really affecting this Bulls team? Absolutely. Because he gets his players to play hard. I think that the players here in Chicago are now tired of not making the playoffs, or Zach LaVine tired of not making the All-Star team. So if Kenny Atkinson can come in and be a motivator, I think that's really all he needs to do. So if my top 2 guys would be Ty Lue, if it's a possibility, and Atkinson. I mean, I really like the 2 of those guys.
Hey, Kendall, another question from a very faithful listener, Jermaine Jones. He says, what would you do to unlock the potential going forward for Wendell Carter and Lowry Barkin? Because both of them have had some injuries, and at different times they've also both underachieved, but obviously they have a lot of potential, both of them.
Have a lot of potential. The one thing that I would do with Wendell Carter Jr. is just emphasize, play your game. I think last season he got caught up into playing the new style of NBA where, you're looking either for a layup or a three-point shot. And the thing about that was that he wasn't playing to his natural instinct. It was taking his instinct away from him. I can tell you a million times I saw him have the basketball within scoring distance of the rim, have a guy that's 6 feet on him, 6'2", 6'3", and not go up for the basket. He would throw it out to the 3-point line. You cannot do that if you're Wendell Carter Jr. You got to take your shots when you have them, and also, I don't like him shooting. I know the NBA is going towards big men shooting 3-point shots, but Wendell Carter is not there yet. I mean, he tried a couple of times, but he needs to stay within his game and play to his strengths. As far as Lowry is concerned, I think if I'm the coach, I'm going to try to force feed Lowry the basketball through cross screens, pick and rolls. I don't like to see him start the game off at the 3-point area. I think he gets in trouble there. Yeah, if he makes a couple, okay, he may have a good game. But when he misses a couple, it turns into a snowball effect, and he really doesn't have a good game after that. I think that you have to run a lot of plays for him because Lowry's not the type of guy that's going to get points in the floor of the offense. Look, you got Kobe White, you got Zach LaVine, 2 electrifying scorers. Where is Lowry going to find the basketball? That's why you got to call plays for him. And I think this is a do-or-die season for him, especially with new management coming in and everything. They're going to really see what Lowry can do.
Yeah, I can't tell how many times Kendall and I are watching games in the green room, and Wendell will catch the ball 15 feet away from the bucket, and we're like, shoot it! And he's got his back to the basket, and he's not even thinking about scoring. But, I think Carter, Kendall, might be a guy that could be involved in a trade this offseason because Arturas plays his cards close to the vest. He kind of gives that rope-a-dope to reporters. He doesn't really give them anything when they ask him questions. But I think that he's looking at this roster, and even though he's saying all the politically correct things, that, there's a good core, there's a lot of young talent here, he's probably looking at what his experience in Denver and thinking, I can shake this up. I can move this guy, and I can throw a pick in, and maybe I can steal a Ben Simmons from Philadelphia or a Donovan Mitchell from Utah because of things that have happened over in those two situations. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get out in the marketplace and shock everybody around draft day and make a trade. I think that the Bulls are in a perfect position to maybe snatch one of these stars that are unhappy in their current situation. Do you think that's something they should explore this offseason?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you can get a star of that caliber, you have to explore it. And, Wendell Carter, unfortunately, would be a part of that deal. I mean, he's a guy that a lot of teams find attractive. I mean, he's 6'10". He can do a lot of things, and he's young. So, and he doesn't have a big deal yet. So, I would anticipate if there was any trade that he would be a part of it. And I agree with you, Mark. I think it's a new front office and the way that they're doing things. They're looking to shake things up. Why not try to go after Ben Simmons if he's unhappy, or a Donovan Mitchell? Unfortunately, I don't think that if that were to happen, I think that possibly Zach or Kobe White could be part of that deal as well.
Yeah, in Utah, I'd probably trade Gobert and keep Donovan Mitchell. That's probably the way it would shake out if they feel like those two can't coexist anymore.
Yeah, but my days in Charlotte taught me this. As a young player, Alonzo Mourning, Larry Johnson, and I couldn't see that staying together was better for us in the long run than going off to different places. And Mark, I've told you this several times. I wish that I had stayed in Charlotte, because I actually thought that I would have won more and my career would have been a lot better had I stayed in one place with those guys. I think that Donovan Mitchell and Gobert, if you're the front office of Utah, you get those guys in the office and say, listen, I'm not trading either one of you guys. We got to work this thing out. And because those are two young, dynamic players. I mean, I wouldn't let those go. No, those guys are cornerstones of that organization.
Hey, Kendall, if Ben Simmons does come to the Bulls, you're going to have to teach him how to shoot free throws because you just know any team, if it got half a brain, they're going to foul him at the end of the game, and his free throw shooting is just awful. But that's another story for another day. Listen, you can also teach some defense because obviously you were a hell of a defender. And I read an article, in fact, last night where you talked about the top, well, all the guys that you defended against, and your top five, I'm going to list them in reverse order. Kobe, tough challenge, of course. Reggie Miller, number 4. Grant Hill, number 3. The one and only, and you did say he's the greatest player of all time, Michael Jordan. But you surprised a lot of people.
I know this one.
Well, I know it too because I read the article, and I'm not disagreeing because this guy had a shot just like Steph Curry. He could shoot from anywhere, and he could shoot it quick. And I'll let you tell who that player is.
Well, that player is Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, formerly Chris Jackson.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the very first time that I guarded him was at LSU when we went the Flying Illini in 1989. We went down to LSU to play them. And, you know, Mahmoud had the basketball. And my assignment, Coach Henson put me on him first. So my assignment was to guard him, the very first play of the game. He has the basketball. He's coming down. All of a sudden the crowd is cheering. And I'm like, what the hell are they cheering for? He had already scored. I didn't even know it. I didn't even see him score. That's how good he was.
He had such a quick release, just like Steph Curry.
You know what? It was faster than Steph.
Okay.
You know, and Steph is a great, quick player, but Mahmoud, as far as his quickness, was on another level. I mean, like and I'm going to go back to another boxing analogy. His offense was like Manny Pacquiao's punches. You couldn't see it coming. And by the time you saw it coming, it was too late. And,
That's amazing.
That's why I had the difficulty.
Yeah, he played with Shaq, and they didn't win anything. You know, I remember the one year they won the NCAA tournament, they lost really early, and I'm thinking, you know, they had Stanley Roberts, another 7-footer back when the Twin Towers thing was in vogue, and they didn't have much success as a team, but I guess it was just two guys that wanted to be the man on that team.
Shaq just seemed to have a problem with scoring guards throughout his entire professional career.
They helped him win a couple titles,
Well, that is true. That is true.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, except for Dwayne Wade, he kind of realized that, hey, I got to let this guy take over.
Hey, Kendall, last week we had Stacey King on the podcast, and he told a story. David was quizzing him if he could remember who the first team All-Americans were back in 1989, and he told a story about going to a banquet and meeting Kathleen Turner and being wowed by her. But I was thinking at the time as he was telling the story, I'm like, man, he can't even hold a candle to my man Kendall. You talk about brushes with greatness. Kendall Gill has met some of the most exciting movie stars and singers. Talk about some of your brushes with greatness on the celebrity scene, Kendall.
Well, I had a brush with greatness the time I was supposed to ask Halle Berry out, but I didn't because I was scared.
Yeah, that's a great story. Tell that one.
Yeah, my friend, of course, you guys know who Martin Lawrence is and the rapper Kid and Play. Back in the day, you know, we were in town in New York to play the Knicks. And at that time, Halle Berry was filming Boomerang with Eddie Murphy. And Martin and Kid came to pick me up from the hotel and took me over to the place where they were filming. And it was the dinner scene. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie, but it was the dinner scene. And during the scene, you know, Halle comes up, and I know she knew that this was like a setup, but she came up to me and asked me, you know, she had some grapes in her hand, and she was eating some grapes. She came up to try and strike a conversation and asked me, do you want any grapes? And Mark, I've told you this stuff. I was like, no, I don't want any grapes.
The answer is always yes, Kendall. The answer is yes.
I know, but I was scared, man. So after the scene was over, we all get into the elevator and everything, and she comes and she stands like right in front of me, man. You know, and Martin and Kid on the other side of the elevator, and they're saying like, ask her.
It's like junior high.
I'm shaking my head like, no. Yeah, I'm shaking my head like, no. She can't see me what I'm doing, but you know, just like I was like, no. So we get out of the elevator. She goes, okay, it's nice to meet you. I was like, nice meeting you too. I never saw her again.
Oh,
So,
she is, in my estimation, the most beautiful woman I think I've ever seen. She is just absolutely stunning, gorgeous.
And then, she is beautiful. But you know, that's the only time in my life I probably ever chickened out on something.
And you got to know Jennifer Lopez a little bit when you were in New York as well, right?
Oh yeah, got to know Jennifer Lopez. Actually, she was a fly girl, and I was dating a fly girl at the time, and they were best friends. And Jennifer used to she used to come to my house a lot, And, I got to know her a great bit. But then when she became J-Lo, she forgot about me, Mark. So, it wouldn't give me the time of day. So, it hurt me so bad because she kind of dissed me in front of some of my friends one time. When I saw her at a movie premiere, and she kind of acted like she didn't even know me. But, I guess that's what happens when you become a megastar.
Now she's got to now she's got to deal with Alex Rodriguez's ego. So she got what's.
Oh yeah. She got what was coming to her.
Hey, Kendall, you always had that bucket list that you used to tell us about, and Halle Berry was certainly on that list. So you crossed her off, I guess, to a degree. But what else is still on that list?
Oh, he can't talk about that now. He's a happily married man.
No, I'm not talking about the female thing. Because there were other things. I mean, he wanted to own condos all over the world, if I remember. What else is still on the list there?
Well, I've kind of not dropped the condo in Paris thing. I don't have the with this COVID thing. I don't have the urge to travel that much anymore. So that's crossed off the list. But to see my son play college basketball.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And do well at it. That's one of the things on my bucket list. I mean, he's really into it now. As a matter of fact, before I got on the phone with you guys, we were just watching the NBA playoffs. I think Denver was playing. I forget who. I think Utah.
Utah, yeah.
Yeah. So he's sitting there watching it, and I can tell he loves the game. I told Mark the other day I've watched The Last Dance so many times. I know all of the words.
He wants to learn from the best, get that Jordan mentality.
Yeah. So he watches it nonstop. So I'm glad that he's finally starting to get the bug and everything. So that's pretty much it. I've pretty much accomplished all of the things on my bucket list. So when he steps out on the college court for the first time, then I think my bucket list will be complete, and I'll have to form a new list.
Yeah, Kendall lived a life. He had a 15-year NBA career. He lived in Manhattan when he played for the Nets, experienced that life in New York. He was telling me a story about you had 8 cars and you looked around in the garage, you're like, what do I need 8 cars for? So you
Mark,
lived that life, didn't you?
Mark, that's when I changed. I came out of my house, David, and the car that I wanted to drive was all the way in the back. The only problem
got to hire somebody to move my cars around.
Yeah, the only problem is the other 7 cars were in the way. I couldn't get to it. So I said, you know what? This is idiotic. And I called my brother up. We go sell 5 of the cars right away. So, I tell my wife sometimes, before this COVID thing happened, you never want to go out. You never want to do this. I was like, look, I'm still trying to recover from my New York years.
Hey, Kendall.
I went out so much.
Hey, Kendall, obviously a sad moment a short while back with the passing of your college coach, Lou Henson, but I'm just wondering if you could talk about not only Henson in general and, the relationship all you guys had with him, but the 89 team is still one of my favorite teams. And yes, you guys would have beaten that 05 team by at least a dozen points. That's my opinion. But just talk about that season 89 and, unfortunately, the heartbreak in that final game against Michigan as well.
Yeah, Coach Henson was, he wasn't my friend while we played there, or during my tenure at Illinois. He became my friend afterwards, and we partnered up on a lot of different projects to raise money for the Cunningham Children's Home, and help build a school on the campus. He befriended my wife and my kids, and invited us over to the house. All my days of playing ball down there, he never invited me to the house. But he always wanted me when I was in town to stay at his house, not at a hotel. So he's a very important part of my life, and I'm going to miss him big time because a lot of people don't know this, but I used to talk to Coach on the phone all the time. We used to talk about basketball and life in general. So he's going to be missed. I mean, he's an all-time great. As far as the '89 team is concerned, man, that was such a great year. I've never had an experience like that since. We went to the Final Four. I remember the happiest moment I ever had was when the final buzzer went off against Syracuse in Minneapolis, when we won the game to go to the Final Four. And, and I tell people this all the time. And Steve Bartle, who I've had this discussion with, my running mate, Steve Bartle disagrees with me, but I think that when we went into that Final Four game against Michigan, that we were overlooking them, and we were looking at Duke, because we had blown Michigan out twice and beat them handily, and really didn't take them all that seriously. And I said to myself before the game, we're playing Duke in the national championship game. And unfortunately for us, we didn't play like ourselves, and Michigan played the best game that they could possibly play. Glenn Rice went on a hot streak. Of course, he played great throughout that whole tournament. But, we're all friends now. We're friends with the Michigan guys and everything. We talk about this game, but, I tell them, listen, we played our worst. You guys played your best, and you still only beat us by 2. And unfortunately, Coach Henson talks about this he used to talk about this all the time. Like he said, Kendall, we were the best team in college basketball. Unfortunately, we had one bad night, and that's the way it ended.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the NCAA tournament, the unpredictability, the fact it's one game and the winner advances, the loser has to go home. But it's a terrible thing with a situation like yours where you dominated them during the regular season, and unfortunately they got that third chance and had the game of their lives. Hey, I want to ask you, you talked about your son and the possibility of playing big-time college basketball, and obviously I've seen him play. The kid is really special, and you said he's going into 8th grade. He's up to about 6 feet tall. Is Brad Underwood already calling you, trying to get him in the blue and orange?
No, he hasn't called me yet, but he knows about him. Phoenix really wants to go to Illinois. He wears orange and blue all the time, but of course his mom graduated from Northwestern,
right?
So he likes the campus up there too. So it may be, I don't know where he's going to go. That's going to be totally up to him, but wherever he does end up, Mark, I just hope that he's happy about it and that he blazes his own trail. So and if he does happen to pick Illinois and Illinois offers him a scholarship, I hope that he goes there and he's much better than his dad.
That would be a pretty tall order to be better than his dad. You had one hell of a college career and a great pro career. Yeah. It's great that you have that relationship and he can rely on you for guidance through this process, because the college recruiting thing can really be overwhelming for a young man, and it's going to be. I know it's going to be fun for you to go through that with him and help him make that good decision.
Yeah, and he's already said, "Listen, Dad, I'm going to Illinois if we get all the recruiting stuff." So. He's already told me that at 13 years old. So, hopefully, if it is a possibility that he can get a scholarship to Illinois and go, that the recruiting process won't be that long.
Hey, Kendall, the final thing I want to ask you about, and I know one of your favorite players is also one of my favorite players, and, he's unfortunately had the injuries, but I love that he's still playing and hooping in a different kind of way, but still at a very high level. We're talking about Derrick Rose, of course. The season he had as an MVP, first of all, Rookie of the Year, and then MVP right off the bat. I mean, what he did that MVP season was unbelievable, and he would have continued doing that, unfortunately, with the injury to, first of all, the ACL to his left knee, and then, unfortunately, a couple more injuries to his knees. I asked Stacey this last week, and I don't mean to get on Thibs, because he was a hell of a coach, but do you also agree that there's no way that Derrick should have been in that game against Philadelphia at the end like he was, unfortunately? And what would his career, as good as it's already been, how much better would he have been if he never had any of those knee injuries?
Well, he would have been a surefire Hall of Famer. I think he could have gone down as one of the best point guards of all time had he not had that injury. I mean, we're talking about the youngest MVP ever, and this team was poised to win championships with Derrick at the helm. I've been asked that question a lot. Should Derrick have been in the game? Had I been a coach, no, I wouldn't have had him in the game, because I believe they were up on Philly by like 16 or something like that. Normally during playoff games, you pull your guys out when the game is in hand and there's no threat, But unfortunately, that's Tibbs' style. He plays his players, and Derrick just got hurt on that. It was a freak accident because he's done that same hop, that same move, each and every time. I mean, a million times before that. And just this time, it just happened. His knee just happened to go. And Mark, I don't know if you remember, but when we saw it, when we were covering the game, I said he tore his ACL.
Yeah, I remember that.
He tore his ACL, man.
Yeah, I mean, the Bulls won that game, and they had realistic title hopes that season. And all of a sudden, it was just deathly silent in the arena, and everyone lost their enthusiasm for the rest of the series. As that series went on, Joakim Noah had a bad ankle sprain. They lost to the 8th seed 76ers, but they weren't going to go very far without Derrick.
No, they weren't. And I think that when Derrick got hurt, it was just all the air went out of the building, and you knew that it was. We weren't going to get past the 76ers without him.
But to his credit, Derrick has persevered through all those injuries and in a strange way has reinvented himself, although he still has incredible moves that, he reminds me of Rod Strickland. That's what his game is now. He's not the high flyer, but he's able to get in the lane and still do almost anything that he wants to do. So I give Derrick Rose a lot of credit, and somehow, some way, I hope maybe at the end of his career he can come back and maybe his final season play in a Bulls uniform. Who knows?
Yeah, I hope so too. And of course, Mark and I have advocated for it, a number of times, but unfortunately, it didn't happen. I thought this would have been the perfect time to bring him back, because he was a free agent last year. But, he found a good place up in Detroit. Had that team been 500, who knows? Derrick probably would have made the All-Star team again. But he did show All-Star type talent up there, and I'm happy for him.
Yeah, the love for Derrick Rose is still strong amongst Bulls fans. Saturday, when I was watching the Memphis-Portland game, the play-in game, I tweeted that Ja Morant reminded me of a young Derrick Rose with the way he can crossover guys and dunk at the rim. And most of the people agreed with me, but there were a couple of Derrick Rose fans who reached out and said, you know what, Mark? He can't hold Derrick Rose's jock. So, that love for D. Rose is still strong.
Yeah, it is. And I saw your tweet, Mark, and actually you said that. Actually, Mark was the first guy to say Ja Morant's name to even speak it in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Because he's such a basketball fanatic, he put everybody on the Ja Morant before anybody knew about him.
That was pretty easy, though. You could see his talent just jumped off the screen.
Yeah, and that's why you should be the GM, Mark.
Well, let's hope we got the right guy in our tours. Before we say goodbye, Kendall, I know people would want us to ask you, who do you got in the finals and who wins the championship?
I've got Portland against Milwaukee.
What?
Portland? I have Portland winning it.
Ooh,
my goodness.
The Lakers going down in round one?
Lakers are going down in round one.
Wow.
And this is why. Dame Lillard is MVP of the bubble right now. Then you got C.J. McCollum, who's coming along, even though he fractured his back. Then you got Carmelo Anthony, who's playing great basketball as a role player. And Nurkic, I had no idea he was that good. I think that he neutralizes Anthony Davis with his size, with his ability to step outside, with his ability to post up. And also, I really like Gary Trent Jr. defensively. I just really like Portland right now, and they've been through. They've had to play the play-in game. I think that they're poised to make an upset. Listen, you're talking to a guy that played on the Seattle Supersonics that was the number 1 seed that lost to the 8th seed.
We weren't going to bring that up.
Okay, I brought it up, but I'm telling you, Portland was a lot better than Denver.
Wow, I thought that was a throwaway question. Now we got the headline.
Yeah.
We're half hour in, we got the headline. Kendall Gill picks the Portland Trailblazers to win the championship.
That's right. And listen, and Dame Lillard texted me the other day, so he's my guy. So I told him that they got enough to win it if they really want to.
51 and 61 in back-to-back games. That is off the charts.
It's awesome, man. It's awesome.
That's Kendall Gill territory.
Yeah, that's like Kendall in the over 40 league.
Yeah. Not the over 40, over 50 league.
Hey, Kendall, you're absolutely the best. I love talking to you. And next time we catch up, it's going to be a lot of boxing conversation. You can bet on that.
Oh, absolutely. We got some great fights coming up.
We do. Hey, Kendall, appreciate it, buddy. We look forward to seeing you real soon. Take care of you and your family.
Yeah, KG, give our best to Wendy and the boys. Thanks for coming on.
Okay, I will. All right, take it easy, guys.
Hey, it's Aldo Gandia, the president of the Barroom Network, letting you know that you can follow us on Twitter at Bears Barroom, and you can follow Mark at Mark Schanowski. And then there's David Schuster. He's got that weird one at SCHUMOUSE.
And welcome back to the podcast. I'm David Schuster. He, of course, is Mark Schanowski, and we really appreciate talking to Kendall Gill. I'm telling you, Mark, I want to go over to his house and just continue the conversation. I love talking to the guy.
Well, I had the pleasure of working with him all those years at NBC Sports Chicago, and some of the most fun I had was car rides somewhere, back and forth to the arena, watching a game in the green room, and just having him go off on a tangent, telling some story about a guy that he played with who reminded him of so-and-so, and some unique insights into players past and current. And then, of course, the stories about starlets that he met were just remarkable. And then, we kept Ken a little bit long, and I just thought, well, I got to get his prediction. Portland? I mean, they don't play any defense. The Lakers will just carve them up. And the Lakers have some issues. They were 3-5 during the restart, as Milwaukee was 3-5. They had the top seed clinched. They didn't really take this all as seriously. You got LeBron, you got Anthony Davis, who are healthy. Rondo's going to be coming back. The Lakers, and I think Portland right now is kind of worn out. They had to fight every game with Lillard playing heavy minutes to try to get them into this playoff situation. They'll give the Lakers a tussle. They'll be in a lot of those games, but I can't see them even winning the first round, much less winning the title. Kendall, come on, man.
Boy, is he going to give it to us if we're wrong, though. Jeez. Let's hope we're not wrong. Anyway, that's where we want to go with this last segment here on the podcast, our predictions.
Yeah,
and the games are already underway. We're recording this on Monday afternoon. There's probably even one game that's already been finalized by now. So let's run down. And the West is really where the playoffs really are to begin with. I mean, ultimately, these are really good matchups. All right, I agree with you. I think the Lakers, maybe Portland takes a game. I mean, right now, Lillard, he scored 112 points in his last two games. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, Lillard will get him one game, but I can't see them. I can't go beyond 6.
I agree. All right, another one, the LA Clippers and Dallas. I think Dallas will give them a tussle because I think Dallas is a team that is on the rise. And obviously with Luka Doncic and Porzingis, you have quite a duo right there. But the LA Clippers are built to win, and that's what's going to happen in this series.
Clippers are probably the deepest team left standing right now. Of course, they got to get Montrezl Harrell back in the mix. He was gone because his grandmother passed away, and that was someone he was very close to. And he missed a lot of basketball. He's so important to that team. I think he's your 6th man of the year in the NBA. They got to work him back in. They got to get Chicken Wing Lou Williams back involved as well. I think ultimately they will win out because of depth. But if a team is vulnerable in an early round with a talent as good as Doncic, that could be a really interesting series, but I will pick the Clippers.
Yeah, the overall talent is in the Western Conference. There's no question about it, at least in my opinion. Houston, Oklahoma City, I'm not a fan of Houston. I'm just not, but they're going to win this series.
I would think so. Talent will win out, although Russell Westbrook is going to miss the first game because of a minor injury, and if he's out for an extended period, Oklahoma City surprised people all year long. That's a potential upset there, but I agree with you. I think ultimately Houston wins.
All right, speaking of missing time, Mike Conley is going to miss at least 2 games, likely 3 for Utah. I think Utah would have given Denver a pretty good tussle to begin with, but if you're going to miss your point guard for the first 2, if not 3 games, and Denver's playing some pretty good basketball right now, so I got Denver.
I think that's pretty much a walkover for Denver. Mike Conley, of course, he and his wife had a child. He went back to Columbus, Ohio, so he'll miss a game or 2. And people don't talk much about Bogdanovich being out. He had averaged about 20 points a game, and they lose that shooting. This is going to be an easy win for Denver in that series.
All right, let's go to to the East. I have all the chalks winning in these first 4 series. I don't think I'd be shocked if there's an upset in any of these.
Yeah, normally Boston-Philly would be something that people get excited
Not
about.
this
That's
year.
a historic rivalry, but with Ben Simmons being out, Embiid's been banged up a lot in these restart games. It looks like Boston should handle that pretty easily. And then Milwaukee will sweep. Toronto probably win in 5. And who am I forgetting? Oh, the Miami-Indiana series will be really good. But I think ultimately Jimmy Butler's will exert over the Pacers.
What is Jimmy Butler? Yeah, Miami over Indiana. I agree with all that. Jimmy Butler came out yesterday and said the rivalry with T.J. Warren is dead. What did he mean by that? Come on, Jimmy. Where's your level of suspense and Hollywood about you? You always said you're Hollywood Jimmy Butler.
You'd think he'd want to ramp it up after T.J. Warren was one of the breakout stars of the bubble. He had a 50-point game and averaged about 30 points a game for Indiana. You'd think he'd want to throw the gauntlet down, saying, I'm going to shut him down. I'm going to hold him under 15 a game or whatever. So Jimmy taking a different approach, but Miami has too much shooting in that series. I think they win it. I wouldn't be surprised. I mentioned this on a radio interview I did last week that I think Miami's going to beat Milwaukee in the second round.
All right. Well, there's your major upset.
That's my big prediction.
Okay.
I was going to save it for next week, but what the heck.
Well, we'll see if we we'll check our predictions next week on our next podcast. All right. A few other things around the NBA. I feel so bad. Alvin Gentry got fired in New Orleans.
Yeah.
He's one of the nice guys in the NBA. And, listen, I'm sure maybe what happened in the bubble with New Orleans might have had something to do with his firing, but listen, management decided to not play Zion Williamson, and Alvin Gentry had to go along with that, and he suffered the fate because of that. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, they played very poorly coming back to the bubble, and a lot of people thought that was the whole reason for this expanded playoffs, was try to get Zion into the postseason. Alvin Gentry, just a quick story. When my son was young, 8 or 9, I took him to a Bulls game and got him a VIP pass, and we were walking in the corridor, and Alvin Gentry came over and said hello and said, how you doing? Talked to him for a minute and made a huge impression on my son. So Alvin Gentry is a good man in my book.
100%. And, I was watching Showtime yesterday. I don't know if you've seen this or not. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. There was a documentary on Showtime with Kobe Bryant. It was either 60 or 90 minutes long, and I was watching this in between some other things. And listen, I always knew Kobe Bryant was one of the most intense athletes I've ever been around. Very much like Michael Jordan. But the intensity came through like I've never felt anything through a TV screen before. He was so intense, and they showed all his highlights when he was back at Marion High School or whatever it is. Lower Marion High School in Pennsylvania, and they showed the press conference where he decided to go pro, and he talked about it then, and then even forward. I guess his documentary was about 3-4 years ago after his playing career came to an end, and he said, "Look, what's the point of me going to college? I'm going to be a basketball player for life. The place for me to learn to play basketball, it's not a college. It's to learn from the best in the world, of which I ultimately hope to be." I'm telling you, Mark, the intensity, it was called Kobe Bryant's Muse, M-U-S-E, on Showtime. Highly, highly recommended.
And he had a great education that went beyond book learning and basketball. He grew up in Italy where his father was playing professionally. He speaks multiple languages. Kobe Bryant was one of the most intelligent men without the benefit of college.
Let me tell you one real quick story about Kobe Bryant. And this is a year that they didn't win a title. And one of his teammates that year was Dwight Howard, unfortunately. He hated Dwight Howard. I mean, he hated him as a teammate. And the Lakers came into the United Center, and the Bulls beat them that night. And the Lakers weren't very good. This is about, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, whatever it was. And he was almost crying after the game because the Lakers played so terrible that night, and he kept staring over at Dwight Howard. And to Dwight Howard's credit, he's come back and has sort of re-energized himself and has played pretty well in a Lakers uniform overall this season. Is playing defense and rebounding, which two things that he never did in the past. Anyway, Kobe Bryant looked over him, and he had daggers in his eyes, and he was almost crying because he was so angry at Dwight Howard. And I felt that intensity in person that day, and I felt it again in the screen watching it on TV yesterday.
Well, the great ones, it always bothers them if they see someone with incredible physical gifts that doesn't get the most out of them. And that was the case with Dwight Howard for most of his career, and he's finally seeing very late in his NBA career, he's got maybe one more chance to get a ring now with LeBron and the Lakers, and he's trying to make the most of it. So give him credit for finally learning, but why it took so long for that light to turn on. I mean, he's bounced from city to city to city over the last few years.
Final thing, Mark, here on this podcast, and we've had a lot of fun, and we once again thank Kendall Gill for making it as fun as it has been today. The NBA draft lottery is coming up later this week.
Yep.
And
Number 7, lucky 7.
As of right now, they're number 7. Mark, I'm looking at a mock draft right in front of me on my laptop. They have the Bulls still at number 7, and they have him getting James Wiseman at 7? You think he's going to last to 7?
No, some team will take him just based on athleticism before 7, but he could fall. He could be 4 or 5. You might see a run on the guards early with Edwards from Georgia and LaMelo Ball. Obi Toppin is a guy who's likely to go in the top 5. The kid from Israel, Denny Avdija. And then you've got Killian Hayes from France. So there's some guys that could push Wiseman down, but ultimately he's not going to fall over to 7.
Well, following up on what you said with Kendall before, if Wiseman falls and the Bulls get him, I honestly think that maybe that trade, if not that night, who knows, but somewhere down the road, I see Wendell Carter being traded. I agree with you.
Well, ultimately, if they would take Wiseman with that first pick, or even if they took Obi Toppin, I think that'd be a sign that Wendell Carter Jr. may be headed to another city.
All right, it's been fun again, Mark.
Always great. Love talking to Kendall. He's the best.
All right, we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good.
Thanks.